Welcome to the IPX True North podcast, where we connect people, processes, and tools.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on another True North podcast with IPX. I'm your host today, Joseph Anderson, and really excited to get this kicked off. Jorge, David, Travis, thanks for joining me. I think we're all equally excited to have this conversation about a new book that we've been working on. And actually, it's been kind of in the works now for multiple years, probably since the first time I met Travis. But before we get started, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Looking forward to this. If you could, we'll just start out with some just general introductions. On my screen, why don't we just go from Jorge, Dave to Travis?
Sure. Thank you, Joe. So my name is Jorge Camba, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Engineering and Technology at Purdue University. So glad to be here.
Hi, David Ewing. I'm a director of digital engineering at SAIC, and I also am a part-time long-term lecturer, they call me, at Purdue University.
And I'm Travis Fuerst, a clinical faculty assistant professor of practice at School of Engineering and Technology at Purdue University.
Awesome. Well, Travis, you and I met, I think it had to be probably about 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago at the campus there, beautiful campus in West Lafayette at Purdue. And we're talking about all things, at the time had a lot of goals for kind of refreshing what we all know as CM2. The industry standard for change and configuration management is what it's often known as, enterprise change management. I always state it's product lifecycle management, right? It's the processes within and outside of everything we in the industry talk about, the PLM system, right? And we really kind of started kicking around, what it would take to write a proper textbook, to look at industry partnerships, to look at university partnerships. And I think that's where we really started drawing this out on the board. And then I had the pleasure of meeting Jorge, obviously knew Dave during that time as well. Throughout our career, I think we've always kind of pinballed around Dave. And it's been an honor for me to work with all three of you in all the capacities throughout the last few years. But why we're here is to talk about a book that we have all co-authored. And when I say book, it's really, as far as I'm concerned, a game changer in our worlds. And it really is something I'm proud of. I have felt for a long time that it's our job to kind of carry the torch and keep that torch lit. Vince Guest being the founder of the CM2 model, and then Ray Wozni and Ken Black kind of being its shepherds over the last, quite honestly, 3 decades. And here we are, now it's our turn to carry on that torch and keep that flame lit. What I'd like to talk about today in this episode is not just the book itself, but why it's important and why it's still relevant. We hear a lot of buzzwords, digital transformation, what's going on with the world of AI when we're looking at advanced manufacturing. There's just a whole lot here. And the reality is everything within this book, as far as I'm concerned, it's those foundational bedrock processes, those standards. So ensuring no matter what you do, no matter what you design, no matter what you build, it is of quality. So I could ramble on and preach about this all day, but I'm going to kind of open it up. This should be fun. So I'm going to shut up just for a second, and all three of you come off of mute and just, tell us why it's relevant to you. Tell us why it's important to you, throughout where you're at in your respective roles, whether it be at the university or Dave, what you've seen, across industry. All right, fellas, it's your turn. I can't do all the talking. Off mute. Go. Come on, Dave. Don't be shy.
Dave.
Well, I think that, like you said, previous travels, along the way, getting folks to understand in the world of PLM, PDM, the intricacies of, configuration management first, and that change management's a subset of that. And they have to play well together. You can't get to this promised land of digital thread kind of thing or digital twin without it. And that's translated into recent work with SAIC and some of the things that we're doing, but also, taking it back and working with Jorge and Travis and the rest of the department at the university, trying to teach the young engineers that are, growing through the engineering curriculum, set them up so that they, replace me and the rest of us out there in the world, and they get these things. They understand, how we have to tie all of these requirements and data sets and products and parts and CADs, and all of those things have to be tied together through the configuration and knowing what that means and why it's a big deal. So
Travis, Jorge, one question that, we always run into, and you've heard me say it, the DNA of an ecosystem or your enterprise. What's configuration management mean to you? And how are you trying to articulate that to your students that are coming through?
So for us, the university, I think, is not just making sure that our students understand it, but our colleagues understand it as well. It's
Mhm.
almost like a challenge for us to make, people understand, well, engineering is not just, all these technical things that you learn, all the math, all the physics, all the, statics, dynamics, differential equations. It's about, working as a team in this ecosystem, right? That you have processes to follow. You have, things that you will have to do in a certain way. So for me, or for us, for Travis and I, it's a battle, and there are not many schools doing this. So for us, just teaching the kind of the business aspect of engineering and the process aspect of engineering, that's for us what we do.
So I teach the freshman level modeling course, service course for engineering. So it's, upwards of 500 and some odd students in ME and Aero. And, they come in thinking they're going to learn how to model. I'm going to learn how to use NX. I'm going to learn how to use SolidWorks. And it quickly becomes more, I'm going to teach you how to design for change, not how to model. I'm not teaching you NX. I'm not teaching you SolidWorks. I'm teaching you how to use these tools to design for change. So the lecture this morning was engineering change management. So we talked all about this and why it's important to document change, to gather all of the requirements, what facilitates change, how is it tracked, how is it facilitated. We're in week 11 of the semester, so we're near the end of the semester. So everything I've taught them up to this point, now it all comes together and they start to see, okay, this is why we're doing what we've done to this point. And they not only model, they're doing it in the context of a PDM system and in context of an engineering change order and sign off. So what they thought they were just going to learn how to create features and sketches and dimension things becomes something bigger to set them up for when they go out into industry. And then they see this level of, content, and then it starts to click a little bit more. But for us, in going through the process of writing the text, it's helped me to better understand and how to convey these ideas to students that have absolutely no context. They're just users and consumers, and now they have to become producers.
Yeah. And, I wish I could say it was different in the industry. I don't hold back much. At least Dave's smiling. And I think he probably knows where I'm headed. We've had some animated discussions about this in the past because, we're cut from a similar cloth. The reality is we're still seeing, large recalls every day, right? We're still seeing children's food contaminated with lead. That just recently got announced a couple of days ago. And, we're seeing large automotive recalls. We're seeing planes fall out of the sky because of issues with changing configuration management. And one of our IPX team members, I was at a client with him. It's been probably years ago. And he had a real good quote that we still use today to an executive that manufactures large scale tier one manufacturing industry supplier. So a lot of components going out to various industries. And he said, the sooner you realize you're in the change business, the better off you're going to be. And this executive kind of looked at him like he was, losing his mind. We design, best in class products to be used in this and this and this. Yeah, it's great. But you're horrible at managing change and configuration. And you're horrible at communication. And you're horrible at integrated logistics support. And your in-field service is horrible. You're in the change business. And the reason you're struggling, the reason we're here is because you don't want to admit it. And I think that's what you two were saying, at the university level is getting everyone to realize, I could preach about this as well. We tell everyone in the world they could be an entrepreneur and they could be a business owner without telling them how difficult it is. And sometimes, and that's why I've always applauded you two, you're trying to teach at a young age, like there's a lot to this. This isn't just simply designing some new widget. It's understanding all the ramifications if you do it incorrectly, if you use the wrong component, if you don't have your suppliers engaged. Dave, can you add on a little bit?
Well, you mentioned exactly, trying to teach the students that a simple thing, impact assessment, right? Like you said, we're in the business of change. Customer says, I want it bigger, wider, taller, greater range, whatever. What does that mean? Right. So the students get a taste of that now, try to teach them as if they were in a business. I actually show them like the engineering B model to sort of set that stage. The other side of that is that I can give them examples, kind of as you referenced. I have a specific customer that impact assessment, change. We want change as requirement. What's the impact downstream? Hey, we want you to build us and show us how this works. Like, great. This is a great example. When we showed them how hard impact assessment was, because they still use these, right? And the greatest tool ever, Excel, right? And it's a struggle to do all that. Impact assessment is a challenge. Having some software systems that operationalize the process is great, right? And there's plenty of them out there. The PLM industry is rife with different things to help. Finding the best way to answer those questions, answering the mail of what's the impact? I changed this thing. How does it affect my sustainment? Do I have to change my maintenance manuals? Things like that. It's right. Hits ILS dead center. It's one thing to make the thing, the vehicle, the aircraft, what have you. Another thing to maintain it over time, over its lifetime of use. And we experience that in aircraft, right? We fly on Delta, American, what have you. But there's folks outside that airplane trying to manage that over time. So trying to set up the students effectively that they can get it, understand it, teach the professionals that may not have had it at a young age. Like you said, change is constant. You are in the business of change and knowing what that means to you.
Yeah, and that's one thing, Jorge and Travis, how do you convey that to your students and your faculty there? It's not just how you service it once, but how do you manufacture it hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times correctly? How do you know what you've built? How are you articulating that message at a university level?
Well, first of all, the thing you said before about product recalls and stuff, we use those as case studies. They provide an endless supply of case studies for our students, by the way. But, we see it all the time in simple things such as, just CAD models. Just you see students keeping track of what they're doing when they work as a team of 3 or 4, and you give them an assembly with 10 components. And as they start making changes, they start remodeling certain things. They completely lose track of what they're doing. They don't know what version 1 looks like, version 2, and they start renaming things. So even dealing with 10 components, 10 CAD files is a challenge. So I don't think the students are used to thinking like big, like you're going to be working in teams with hundreds of people. You're going to have to take care of the product throughout its entire life. It's not just designing the 3D model and you're done. You're going to be involved in other aspects of it. And for faculty, I think faculty, unfortunately, in many cases, we are so focused on innovation, the next big thing, that we forget this is something that will have to be maintained over time. So we tend to kind of lose a little bit of our vision there.
I think Jorge makes a great point, if you don't mind me jumping in a sense that the student isn't used to seeing, hey, I made a CAD change, you're in a CAD class. They're probably going to material or fracture mechanics afterwards, right? And they're doing some type of an analysis. Those things are related in the thing that you're making, the vehicle, the aircraft. And gosh, I changed the CAD. The impact because of the configuration is, geez, I have to change the mesh in my 3D FEA. I have to change the material, what have you. And, we all know that starts to get big really fast, in a big product. And just like, I think we've all kind of nodded our head and said, yeah, the students don't get it. And maybe sometimes the faculty doesn't. The more we kind of hopefully push it in, the better off we're going to make the young engineers as they join industry.
And just to add on to that, I think a lot of faculty and a lot of schools, in general, we go to, scientific conferences and academic conferences all the time. And I think the assumption is, students will learn it, once they start on their job or once they do an they will learn it on their own, right? And it's not easy to, learn all this stuff on your own. There are many moving parts that you have to, know the terminology, you have to know what you're talking about. So I think that's probably something that we don't emphasize enough in academia, and we should.
One way that I've tried to introduce it, obviously, I teach the CAD course. It's traditionally been you model, you submit to the learning management system, Brightspace, you get it graded, you send it back. But my background being more the data management, the PDM, I've instituted the product data management system, and now they have to work within the confines with the collaboration and everything. And what became interesting to me is after the first semester of implementing that at scale within a large body of students, they came to me, or certain students, I had no less than 5 design build teams, students were on design build teams saying, we need this on our design build team because we're fighting what you're trying to fix. They're sharing files via Google Docs or OneDrive, and they realize we've lost control. We don't know which one's the latest model, and they inherently gravitated to it. They saw the benefit, even though they didn't fully understand it or grasp it. They say, this can fix our problem. Now we need to know how. So now we're working with them to get them into a PDM instance, and they're working in it, and they're learning. They're making mistakes, but they're learning. So when they hit industry, it's not the first time they've used it or seen it, and now they can move on. The second or third time they see it, now they start to understand it. So that's how I'm seeing it.
Hopefully that grows. You plant the seed, right? If they understand what and why of configuration management and the change management aspect, and it's easier to think about, the CAD simulation, the things that tend to be near and dear to the engineer's heart, right? Last week, I had the conversation, well, how should we configuration manage these other things? I says, it doesn't matter. It's the same way. It's enterprise configuration management, right? Whether it's a 5-axis mill, the assembly line that you put things together on, or the CAD files, they're all managed the same way. You don't just apply this to the product, the thing you make, you apply it to the things that make the thing you make. And getting folks to kind of have that aha is like, yeah, really, we can treat the building as another one of our products, as an asset, and if the folks have the foundation, it's not hard for them to make the jump saying, oh, hey, great, we can start to treat these things in a similar way. And granted, I'm not selling them, but manage the change over time. Why should I be changing the electrical to support these new things? Oh, I have a requirement to add more milling capacity, what have you. Okay, so the change is now being driven in an effective way with the right amount of rigor, not, hey, I just feel like changing the electrical.
Right. Well, and that, as you three are aware, this has been something I've been a champion of now going on almost 3 decades, which is pretty funny. When I think back, when I first got my first CM2 certification, I didn't even graduate college yet. And that, obviously a long time ago, fell in love with it, really made a lot of sense on the entire enterprise side. And I've been on that kind of pedestal for a long time and really pushing industry and business leaders, not just our future business leaders and our future engineers, but getting everyone to understand why this is so important, right? This isn't just engineering change. It's not just about managing engineering configuration. This is about everything you do. Even on the administrative side, you have to have a change in configuration management process. That's the enterprise. That's the ecosystem. That's that DNA. And that's why, to me, I'm so passionate about this. Something that, my kids look at me and go, Dad, that's great, but at the end of the day, when I look at them and I go, it's the ability to trust what you're eating is good. It's the ability to know when you start your vehicle in the morning and you get on the road, your brakes are going to work. It's ability to know when you board a plane that it's going to stay in the sky. That's why these things are so important to me. And it's the same for medical devices. We work across all industries with all government agencies, but we still see, and this is something that still bothers me every morning when I wake up, companies, instead of investing in proper training for their people, instead of investing in proper system requirements, I'm sorry, I've seen a lot of companies spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars every 5 years on a new system or an upgrade to a legacy system and still having quality issues. It's because they don't change the way they behave. They don't change their processes. They don't have the right processes or the mindsets that says, you know what, quality is important. Instead, what they do, and this is what keeps me up at night, they factor in all of this into the warranty cost, right? This is just, we're going to hedge, we're going to take a gamble that nothing's going to go wrong or nothing bad, and by bad, I mean, we're not going to hurt someone or kill someone, everything up to that will factor in. But man, when you have something that changes the outcome or changes the lives of your consumers, it could really be damaging to your brand. But as we've seen, there are a lot of companies that, within a few months they recover. To me, is something that I'm trying to fix. What's your take on that? And Dave, if you don't mind sharing a little bit from your view, and then, Jorge and Travis, what you're seeing, what's the way, how can we change the mindset of our business leaders in regards to the importance of these types of things and to the CM2 model and why it is important and why it should be a foundation of quality that they stand on.
And I think we have a book that should be required reading, right, for all of them. Right? Even if it's there's having the executive staff, they're not going to become CM2 experts overnight. They've got folks that more exposure, the executive leadership class that you folks host, right? Getting them more exposed so they can see that, they can see the ramifications. But like you said, it's got to become a change the habit kind of thing. You can't kick the ball down the road and roll the dice on, I'm not going to have a warranty problem. Because like you said, unfortunately, sometimes that warranty problem, it might be benign. Oh, hey, I got to change a part, big deal. But you see things in the news, like you said, the food was bad, or an airplane falls out of the sky, and those are people's lives, right? So nobody wants that to happen. And obviously, the firms that are affected by that didn't want that to happen, but that is what happens. I think it's a swallow hard and, say kind of a gut check, say, all right, hey, yeah, we really need to invest in this because we're saving money. We're trying to eliminate the downside. We're trying to eliminate the risk by doing a better job. By doing that better job, I believe you add to scalability, better capability of the firm too. So I think the investment, it helps both ways. But a lot of times you just got to say, hey, we're going to go do it. And sometimes it's tough to get folks to invest that way.
Yeah. And, Jorge and Travis, before you add on it, I'm going to age myself a little bit. I always tell my children, I'm so sorry I'm doing this to you because, it used to happen to me. I'd roll my eyes. But there was a time when, my grandfather, when I was young, would, often say they just don't make things the way they used to. I believe
I say all the time.
and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of his old tools. I have an old Farm All B of his still runs, and they're dinosaurs, right? As far as what they can do, right? They can get the job done. They might not be as innovative as the things we have today, but what I can tell you is that they were made of quality. They were designed with quality in mind. They were designed with manufacturing longevity and serviceability in mind, because those things still run. They might not be the most efficient with what we have today, but when it comes to, are they going to work next year? Yeah. Will I be able to use them in 10 years? Absolutely. And those are things, Travis and Jorge, from your seats, do you feel like we could get back to, a combination of both where we could still push innovation? We like to say, you should strive for innovation, but you still have to have guardrails, right? Do you feel like that's something at a university level we're even touching on today, or that we could get back to?
You would think that, obviously things have become, products become more complex. Everything has to be released, ASAP, that sort of thing. But you would think that having a robust process in place would actually foster innovation, will make it easier, right? So I believe we're not innovating enough simply because we're getting stuck in the process aspect of things. And in fact, back to the previous question that you asked, that what should we do in academia to kind of let people know that this is important? And I think it is important. I don't think we're doing a good job at letting people know this is important, right? Dave mentioned, exposure. As you know, I just taught a change management course, at Purdue this semester. I just finished a couple of weeks ago. And it's a graduate level course, and my students are working professionals. And I think a lot of them took my course because they needed the credits, not because they knew what they were getting themselves into. But at the end of the semester, I shared the feedback with you. A lot of them said, this is a great course, best course I've taken. This is so relevant to what I do. I deal with this every day. So I don't think we're doing a good job at exposing people and letting them know, hey, it's not important, it's critical to your business. So
yeah, from my perspective, when we talk about design, we're talking about longevity and innovation. It frustrates me now that it seems like a lot of the manufacturing goes to the term planned obsolescence. For example, what I think of, and I bring it out every now and then, like, how can I use this? I have a Galaxy Note 10 that's almost 12 or 13 years old. The thing works great, but I can't use it. It will barely connect to the internet. They stopped the firmware updates 15 or 10 years ago. Yep. I can still use this, but I can't. So it's like I have to move on to the next thing. So it's like you're forced to move to something else. even though I have something perfectly capable of probably doing the job. That's just my 2 cents on it. We're building things to be replaced instead of fixed or repaired anymore. It's a throwaway economy instead, building the opportunity to upgrade, which they do in aviation and things like that. You can swap out systems. The B-52, for example, the cockpit looks nothing like it did 50 years ago, and we're able to do that. So designed for the capability to upgrade and keep up with technology. Unlike the track, my grandfather and my father-in-law, big tractor guys, and those tractors can sit in a field and rust for 30 years. You can bring it out and make it run in a couple weeks. It's just amazing.
You're seeing some of those things with like MOSA coming out, modular system architecture, whatnot, kind of to Travis's point of, the B-52 doesn't have that, but designing new systems and features that have that modularity. And Jorge, I thought, brought up a good point that stirred a thought in my head. You talk about design for reliability, things like that, and design for manufacturability, design for robustness, right? That's kind of like the innovation needs to be there to achieve your question, Joe, of how do I develop the system, the product that I can maintain over time in a positive way and not have to throw it away, like the tablet example. I think we all probably had that tablet example, or our phone. And it's funny because we all have our phone next to us, and usually when I'm teaching, I'm using that as the example. Hey, new screen, new cameras, things that you're changing over time. But yeah, that's I think got to be the thought process, and we tend to be doing better about it now. On the government side, we do a lot because of the nature of the beast of what we're building, different defense and weapon systems. But gosh, you can't go and work on your Toyota or Honda too much in the garage anymore, right? It's not like, the old class, you see folks running the classic muscle cars kind of thing, where just like the tractor example, you can fix anything and keep those things running and running very well. But not everybody can do that. The robustness, I think, maybe part of the equation also has to be the requirement for robustness is, hey, I don't have to have super expertise in car mechanic kind of idea to fix my car, because that does make it harder to sustain that asset over time. You want folks to be able to manage that, and that helps every industry, I think. So it keeps people in jobs and things like that. I think it helps us, economically, all kinds of good things that goes along with that.
And I think it's designed for robustness, and also what Travis mentioned earlier, designed for change, right? And we see it in the classroom. A lot of our students think that products are, modeled from scratch every time. Like, no, you reuse a lot of these things, right? And you should prepare your data sets, your CAD models for reuse. Yeah. It makes a huge difference, right? When you have a high quality, data set, a high quality CAD model, whatever it is, it makes it easier to adjust it, to make a change and reuse it, in somewhere else, or in your next model or your next generation, whatever it is that you're designing.
Yeah, like you said, you've done the work, you've done the simulation.
Exactly.
General Motors or Ford, they've designed thousands of braking systems. They know the heat dissipation and the diameters, and pick off the shelf of braking systems.
Right. Yeah. And it's a little designed for the one word we haven't touched on, interchangeability, right?
Yeah.
And as we kind of wrap up the podcast over the next 5-10 minutes, that's one of the elements that, we bring to the table as well when we're talking to these companies. A lot of them are struggling with deviations and waivers. That's the one data point that if stockholders ever started asking, I think you'd actually see a change, and at least in the business mindset, which is, how many deviations and waivers do you operate off of, right? How many quality escapes or near misses have you caught over this last year? And that's always revealing, right? When you see a company that's running off of deviations, right? That means they've made changes on the line. I know, Dave, you see this all the time as well.
It gets lost in the cost of the line.
Yeah, well, it's part of the normal process, right?
You're right. It's normal.
It becomes the normal process. Yeah.
It's the existing norm. We need a new normal.
Yeah.
Right.
I always laughed at, the internal processes. So we do, as we do these large enterprise assessments, from their supply chain to the internal workforce to the procedures, all of the administrative side, their system requirements. Basically, does your audio match your video from a business perspective? And one we always find that always makes me smile is their little, disclaimer off of their deviations and or waiver process, which is, these are short-term changes that are not to be long-term baked in operating standards, and some of them have been operating off of those for years,
That's an ongoing. I actually have to teach people that often. Just, it's a change. No, it's a deviation.
Right.
I ran out of stock of grade 5 bolts. I'm going to temporarily use grade 8. It's fine. The engineers can buy off on it, but it's until I restock, or an example like that. It's not permanent. If you want to do it, you got to roll a change.
Right.
Go do the thing you have to do. And even teaching folks change. What is a change? I make a typo on a drawing or a given data set. Well, that's a change. I get Rev B. What's the difference between that and form, fit, and function changes, right? Oh, it's all a change. Well, yeah, but you handle them, accordingly, and getting folks to wrap their head around that. So there's a method to the madness for all this stuff, right?
Right.
How we want to manage it. And it goes right back to changing CAD, right? You teach them there. Those students, when they get out into industry, it makes us better off. Whatever industry we're in, like you said, medical, food, what have you, it doesn't matter. Everyone gets better.
Even taking it back, when my stint in IT, when I would do value stream workshops with the different IT groups, and we would start with, what's the first process? And we'd argue over what the first step of the process was. But then as it went along, it's like, well, that's not how it's documented. Well, that's how it's done. And they don't even know what the documentation says because they've just done it this way the whole time. So they don't even know what the documented process is. Therefore, they don't even know there's a change that's been made, or a deviation or anything like that.
Yeah. So why document the process?
So why document the process the way it's done? Yeah.
Well, guys, we're kind of at that time where, our producers are telling us to wrap it up. I could continue to talk about these things for days, and I hope to, maybe get the four of us back together and make this kind of a series. But we'll start kind of diving into each element of the CM2 model, and how that impacts an organization, how it impacts a government, right? We've done a lot of work with the CM2 model, just making government agencies operate better. Has nothing to do with making a product or designing a product. So there's a lot here, as you three gentlemen are aware. But what I want to do is, first of all, obviously we didn't use this podcast to promote the book that much, and I don't think we need to. But for me, I want to say a few things. First of all, really hats off to you three. It's been a great pleasure of mine. All the work you put into this, can't say thank you enough. And I look forward to writing the next book, as we've already started talking about. There's a lot going on. And obviously our listeners and our viewers, you're going to see things coming out over the next few days, the next few weeks, that are going to take CM2 to the next level. And the reality is, if you're listening, if you're watching this, and you or someone that you work with, or that that you truly care about quality, that you truly care about what you do, this book is not fiction. This book is not a quick read. This book is a textbook. It's a manual. As far as I'm concerned, I can say this. It is the industry holy grail on what you need to do to make sure what you're designing, what you're building is robust. And it's important. And I'm not going to stop saying it until my time here is done and I'm in the middle of the woods in a cabin somewhere drinking a hot drink, because this is important. So I'm speaking in this microphone, I'm looking at this camera, and I'm joined by these three gentlemen that equally share the same passion and the same care. I get to say it a little bit more robustly because I just can. This is important. Whether you buy the book or not, you need to understand what true enterprise change and configuration management means, how that relates to product lifecycle management, how it relates to configuration lifecycle management, how it relates to manufacturing execution systems. I could go on, and I could drill into all of them. What I'm here to say is this stuff's important. If you build, if you design, if you have a service, you should do it where it's sustainable and scalable and it's of quality. But gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Thank you for all of your hard work with this book. I look forward to the journey ahead. For those of you interested in this book, we'll provide links and all that good jazz. There's some great discounts when you purchase this book for taking CM2 courseware. So basically, I believe the purchase of the book becomes kind of a wash. But stay tuned, everyone. Dave, Travis, Jorge, thanks for joining me. I look forward to the next one.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe and review the show. And for more information on IPX, visit ipxhq.com.